South Africa, like many other countries, is marked by severe violence, especially targeting women. Women face violence at home as well as in the workplace in the form of sexual harassment. And many studies conducted over the years now show that sexual harassment in the workplace is currently on the rise. But now, in a recent Unisa study, it revealed that 51,800 sexual offences are committed annually in South Africa. But what is the employer's legal responsibility to ensure this practice is actually eliminated? We're now joined by Hedda Schensema, Director of Employment Law at Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyr, to take this conversation forward. And Hedda, thank you so much for your time. Good morning to you. The numbers are telling us that this behavior, these incidents are quite prevalent. And I think these are just the reported incidents we're looking at here, the ones that the Unisa study showed of over 51,000 cases in the workplace. But what are employers actually doing about this, Hedda?
Good morning, Tumelo. Thank you to you and your listeners for having me this morning. Well, as you know, and you've already rightly said, Tumelo, there's the code that has been implemented since March. The purpose of this code is to bring more awareness, is to place an obligation on both the employer and the employees to ensure that the workplace is free from any form of harassment. Remember, this is not only just focusing on sexual harassment. It focuses on any form of harassment such as intimidation, bullying, all of those very unpleasant and difficult issues that many employees are faced with within the workplace. So the purpose of the code is to try and eliminate that. And what is interesting, it now places an onus on the employer to ensure further that the environment or the work environment is a safe one. So that's not only an obligation in terms of the employer's duty, it's obviously an obligation in terms of our legislation, such as the Employment Equity and Occupational Health and Safety Act, which requires an employer to create a work environment that is safe for all. So those obligations are positive obligations on the employer to ensure that the workplace is both safe and harm-free for all employees, as well as anyone who is visiting or working in that workplace. So there's an extension to those individuals as well who should be protected.
Yeah. What are then the repercussions, Hedda, of an employee found guilty of any form of, harassment towards another employee in the workplace? What are the consequences they may potentially face?
Right. So all employers obviously should have a policy in place which deals with any form of harassment and what are the potential consequences in relation if you are found guilty of any form of harassment. The message to your employee should simply be, this is a zero tolerance approach. We will not accept any form of harassment in our workplace, and that you potentially face a summary dismissal if you misconduct yourself in such a manner.
And also employees would rather have a more preventative measure than a reactionary one. So what then are some of the responsibilities here by the employer to ensure the safety of employees at the workplace?
Absolutely, Tumelo. I can only stress training, and awareness. All employees need to be trained. This should not just be left to a certain group of individuals within your workforce who are then responsible to ensure that sexual harassment or any form of harassment is being inflicted on any persons in the work environment. Your employees should be made aware. They should receive training on a regular basis. You as an employer should conduct risk assessments on a regular basis to ensure that you are aware of what is happening within your workplace, and that employees feel comfortable in terms of the policies and procedures of the company, that they can come forward in the event that they are victims of such form of harassment.
Yeah, I just want to remind our viewers of the code that we're making mention of. This is the code of good practice on the prevention of elimination of harassment in the workplace, of course implemented back in March by the Ministry of Employment and Labour. It published this code. And Hedda, in your opinion, I mean, what's government trying to do here, just in holding employers accountable through this code?
So it's to eliminate any form of harassment within the workplace, Tumelo. So that it goes a long way in terms of the code. It's no longer an instance where one simply can say, well, I didn't know. Remember, our legislation provides obligations on or implements obligations on our employers to ensure that the workplace is safe from any form of harassment or discrimination. And that's not only now come up. We've had it in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, where the employer is obligated to provide a safe working environment. And that would obviously extend to any form of harassment and employment equity. You, as an employer, if you do not act in the interest of your employees and you fail to protect your employees and you were aware, for instance, of some form of harassment and did nothing about it, you could potentially then face a damages claim in respect of the Employment Equity Act.
Right. So in the event that the employee is not satisfied with all internal procedures to resolve, an incident where they are, accusing another employee of harassment, what are some of the options outside the workplace with which they can pursue, legal options at that they can pursue?
Sure. As you rightly say, Tumelo, the employee would then, if the internal proceedings, because generally this would follow the grievance process within a company, if the employee is dissatisfied with that outcome, the employee could then obviously approach the CCMA or any bargaining council. It is a form of discrimination, so it would ultimately then end up in the labour court eventually if no mediation or conciliation had resolved the dispute between the parties.
All right. We'll leave it there. I appreciate you speaking to me about this. Hedda Schensema, Director of Employment Law at Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyr. Thank you for your time this morning.